Welcome back to another episode of the Tactical Alpinism Podcast, where we talk with leaders in mountain warfare, professional mountain guides, and athletes, all with the intent to highlight the crossover between recreational and military best practices in the mountains, so that you can go bigger the next time you get out. My name is Maury, and this is a Mountain Locker episode where the focus is on a specific piece of kit or gear. Today's focus is on splitboarding and all the equipment needed before that. But before I get into introducing the episode and the guest I'm bringing on to talk it, I have one reminder, one announcement, and that is that as this airs, the Uphill Endurance Challenge for November is ending. Those results are due by the 5th of December, and that is when I will total and announce the winners for the prizes, up to $1,000 in prizes that I have to give out for the people that participated and submitted at least 12,000 feet of uphill elevation gain. 12,000 feet is what you need to enter to potentially win the prizes. And then if you get 6,000 feet more, so 18,000 total, that's a second entry. If you get 24,000 feet, that's a third entry, and so on. So every additional 6,000 feet gets you an additional entry to win one of those prizes that is available for the Uphill Endurance Challenge. Today's guest, because I am not a splitboarder and I don't know that much about splitboard equipment other than how to put it together, is Issac Laredo. Issac found his appreciation for the outdoors growing up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, before attending Sierra Nevada College in Lake Tahoe, where he majored in environmental science and outdoor leadership. Issac is an AMGA certified splitboard guide, avalanche course leader, and leave no trace master educator who guides trips around the world from California's High Sierra to powder riding in Japan and the rugged Cordillera Huayhuash in Peru. I brought Issac on because outside of his guiding, he also writes gear reviews for Outdoor Gear Lab and some of the other gear companies. And so he has a really in-depth, specific, comparative focus on these different pieces of equipment. And he's also one of the best riders I know. It's really cool to watch Issac ride aboard in the resort or in the backcountry. He just has style and flows. It looks really good. So that's why I brought him on. The podcast is continuing to grow, and that is largely thanks to you all sharing it. Word of mouth is absolutely the way that this thing continues to get in front of the right people who find it valuable. So please subscribe to and follow the show on your platform of choice. Leave a rating, and most importantly, share with at least one person that will find it interesting if you enjoy the conversations. One more note is that I am now posting these episodes on YouTube as well. So please give Tactical Alpinism on YouTube a subscribe so you see it there, especially if you like the video format better. Thank you, and I will not see you on the backside. This episode will just end, and then I will catch you next time. So I'm just going to dive right into the questions, and you'll just get to react as we go.
Take it away.
Because you're fairly good at telling stories and whatnot. So I'm going to start with a story of splitboarding versus resort. And is there a point where you realized you couldn't use a splitboard the same as you could a resort board?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the biggest difference is sometimes the split in the middle, and you really notice it when it's not like a nicely tuned splitboard. Like you notice a bird edge and all that stuff way more on a splitboard, and the general torsional flex a little more. And I notice it largely because I love carving, and there's times where you get the opportunity to go do like lift access ski touring, which is just fantastic. And my soul still really wants to carve in the commuting parts of those lift access splitboarding days or ski touring days. And trying to really lay down turns on the splitboard is different, definitely. A little different anyway, like hard pack turns because of that torsional flex and the edge.
And folks should totally go look at your Instagram to just see some of the epic
carving turns that you lay down? Because if to me they're impressive. I don't know much about snowboarding.
I love turning. I do love turning. That's probably where I notice it the most. Is that or uh, some types of like jumping.
Okay.
Those are two places that I notice it the most.
So
Um,
like hop turns and steeps.
Honestly, not even hop turns and steeps are pretty consistent, but like true jumping of medium sizes. I'm not a big jumper, but I like some air here and there. And
Medium versus big in your mind.
uh, for me as being not that great of a jumper, I put medium at like a 10. Imagine like a 10-foot drop or something like that.
Okay.
It feels in the medium world.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's a good clarifying question.
Yeah. 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 I mean, because some people are like 50-foot drop, no big deal.
Totally. That is not me.
Maybe
That's
maybe
a
not no
big.
big deal. Maybe not no big deal, but not as
Yeah,
big of a
yeah.
deal.
That's a dropper. That's a
Yeah.
dropper. That's a big dropper.
So yeah, just to introduce what we're talking, it's like the goal is to talk split boards and like electing a split board, especially if they're coming from a resort. And then also we might talk of like why use a split board instead of snowshoes as sort of a good starting point because that was the historic way for snowboarders. And then sort of like some of the hardware differences and what people should be looking for there. And I know that'll get into some binding and boot specific stuff. So we'll start talking hardware towards the end of talking to boards. And then sort of like first, it's like, I know in skiing, and I'm not familiar with splitboard kit or snowboarding kit whatsoever, which is why I brought you on to talk this. So it's like, first is how much of a difference in split boards and the shapes and the type of board you pick are you, or how specific are you able to get for the objective? Because in skiing, you have like a skinny ski mountaineer, light ski mountaineering ski versus like a powder ski. So how specific are you getting within the split boards you pick for different objectives? And then where would somebody start for their first board or split board rather?
Totally. Uh, Having split boards are kind of like it's great to have a quiver. You always have something that's going to do one thing better than another, and a lot of it you get to choose based off of feel. Like I kind of want this experience, whether it's a lot of float and ability in tight trees and powder and that kind of stuff. Like then picking a swallowtail or a wider, shorter board is going to be fantastic. And then you can also pick things that really provide a good, stable, high quality turn on like open hard pack things where you can almost like surf big open bowls where you're carrying speed, you're having a great feel, and there's lots of energy within it. And then there's the whole other concept of like, I want something that is really stable, easy to turn, has a longer effective edge so I could be on steep, icy, hot turning kind of stuff. And that's going to be more of like your traditional set, like directional twin, camber, longer effective edge kind of thing. So you have a lot of ways that you can play it to have either just like a really unique high quality, fun meadow skipping experience that gives you all the advantages you want, like more float so you can ride lower angle pow, or pick a board that is a total weapon for steeper alpine terrain. And a lot of them do exist, like to hit those markers pretty good, where it could be a one quiver board.
Yeah.
I kind of like to think about having split boards. It's like they're just almost like they're different rides, they're different cars.
Yeah.
So I've got like a Ferrari in there.
Totally.
That's I
Yeah.
totally love riding the Ferrari
Yeah.
on those
I
special
mean,
days.
so I don't know if you're sponsored by any of these board companies. I know you do gear reviews
Mhm.
for a lot of them. So it's like if you were to pick a one board versus a two board versus a three board quiver, what would like the shapes and the style, and you can say brands if you want to, look like as the difference as you go from one board to a three board quiver?
Yeah, so the the one board quiver, you're gonna try to have something that does everything really, really well. Like Jones does a great job at doing the one board quiver kind of thing fantastically, as well as offering really unique shapes to help you expand into different experiences.
And
So
is that
like
like the
a
the
common
hovercraft being an example of
the
that?
hovercraft, the hovercraft I think could actually be a pretty good one board quiver, truly. And that's one of those that kind of splits that difference really effectively to be fun in that low angle tree wiggling. And also, like, it's not going to be as great in steep, icy terrain, something like a Jones solution, but I've ridden it in plenty of those spaces and it does do actually quite good. So like that Jones Solution, Jones Stratos, Hovercraft, those are all really good one board wonders. Like Kura Shapes makes some really good one board like single quiver items. Like they've got this escalator and elevator that really focus on light construction, but have long drawn out noses. That's something that I kind of
Mm-hmm.
I do like. It gives us a nice pivot point for
Yep.
like those pivot turns. Excellent powder flotation, longer effective edge. And then when you start getting into anything that's going to do everything well has some compromise as it relates to a specific purpose.
Totally.
So like I commonly ride like that Kura Shapes escalator, and that does great everywhere. But if I want maybe a little more float on a deep day, then I have like a swallowtail split board that has a V notch in the tail.
Mm-hmm.
And that encourages the tail to sink down in the powder snow. And then you can actually lean onto your front foot, which is totally different than normal powder riding. Normally you're leaning back like a redder, but then you can lean on your front foot and almost accelerate. So on those Tahoe storm days where you get 2.5 feet overnight and you're like, how are we going to move anywhere and also not touch slopes that are like above 30 degrees? The swallowtail is like a great kind of risk management tool in that regard. You can actually move and have fun in lower angle terrain because you have that physics working on your side.
Yep. And with it, I'm imagining it's fairly similar for like when you're talking effective edge to skiing in skiing, when we're looking at a ski for steeper ski mountaineering hop turns, we're going for as long of an effective edge as possible. And you'll start seeing skis that are in like the 20 to 25 to 27 meter turn radius range in there. And whereas if you're looking at more of a carvy ski, you're looking in the like 15 to 20 meter turning radius range. Is it kind of the same thing for snowboards?
Same concept, yeah. Longer effective edges generally come with longer models, like longer length, and also longer turn radiuses. There are some models that this probably doesn't happen in the ski world as much, where they have actually a shorter length, but like a really short nose and tail and a compressed contact point to give it a really long relative effective edge to its size.
You actually
So
you
can
do
ride
have the same
smaller
thing.
boards, like
Yeah, you do have the same thing in the ski world where like, and what happens is the nose and or the tip and the tail width are just closer to the waist width in order to get that longer radius instead of having more of a taper.
Yep. Love it. So yeah, same concept. We're kind of going for that same vision.
If we're going for two boards, do you keep that one all like quiver killer board, or do you go at two different boards?
I generally always have the quiver killer board around.
So the quiver killer is the base, the foundation.
I think it's a foundation board for sure. And then from there, I start to expand to something that is just because it happens very frequently in our life where I get to that more like really awesome low to medium angle powder board and those generally also do really good in like open bowls and stuff like that, just to provide that play, like kind of the playful style of riding board where it's just casual, like a little more casual riding. Either you're managing avalanche hazard or take trees or that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And then, or are you continuing with the second board?
And I think the third one would probably be and of course the varying, like the way you would approach this would be based off of what your priorities are. But then I think the next one is kind of like that ultralight mission board. And that could be, those are actually like generally made with carbon or some type of combo, but really lightweight, probably has a little more effective edge in that regard and really focused on like the touring efficiency of it for bigger mountain missions.
And then as we're talking about like bigger missions versus say one quiver board, how do you look at the riding feel versus the touring efficiency of the boards you pick and the setups you pick?
I love I do love the ride feel. I really, really do. So it's really like important to me because I think it really influences like I'm a snowboarder first, but it really influences like the whole experience. However, I don't think there has to be that much of a compromise to where it's like, oh, this board is just no fun at all to ride. There's a lot of them out there that are like really light, durable, and so fun to ride. And I think like Jones and Karua both do that like really effectively. They're just light enough, and their construction is still really quite durable. The shapes are aesthetic and totally have a lot of feel and flow to them. But it would say like if it was traversing and I was walking really, really far,
Yeah, a lot
I would
of
definitely
flatter rolling terrain.
prioritize. Yeah, I would definitely prioritize the touring and the lightweight over that kind of over
Yeah.
the ride feel. But I do strive to just pick the board that does both of those things really, really well. And it's
Yep.
not that, and I don't really have to compromise on the ride feel, but I
Totally.
still get the attributes. So I think like the Jones and Crew are the sweet spot for that.
Awesome.
Each.
And then for like skis, you have a hard boot, you have like your waist doesn't change and you're always traveling in kind of the same directional mode. Whereas for split boards, when you pull them apart, you're now compromising your edge hold in a lot of ways. So is there any consideration for you on like that edge hold as you're doing cross slope travel in firmer conditions as far as the board you're going to pick in split mode?
Width is probably the biggest. Width and camber profile are probably going to be the two biggest things that will impact your ability to travel across a slope in whether you're split skiing or skinning. So with just a narrower waist profile and narrower kind of nose profile, that's going to be the biggest thing to one of the biggest things to help get you solid purchase when you're traversing across steep slopes. Similar to skis, kind of work that way as well. Another one is going to be like a side cut length. A longer side cut will give you a little more purchase for that skinning. That's why skis, another reason why skis are a little easier to side hill on. It take a little less specific technique because a long snowboard side cut is like 9.5, or 10. And that's like tiny in the world of skis.
Yep.
And then another one is going to be camber profile. So like having actual camber underfoot and generally running to like a later early rise, that gives you way more purchase than some kind of hybrid. So I honestly generally try to avoid those hybrid profile split boards or the rocker split boards just because the side hilling is so tough.
Yep.
Like I've
and
been
like a rockered board, I imagine, just like in skis, is really nice for POW.
Yeah,
but
totally.
then
Easy
has
turn.
terrible edge hold because it kind of feels like you're standing on a lunch tray and pivoting.
Exactly, totally.
Like for folks that aren't, or before we keep going, like for folks that aren't necessarily familiar with the terms, it's when we're talking side cut, that's the contact points on the side of the ski from front to back. And then when we're talking camber, that's the underfoot contact points for the ski. And so the shape of the ski where it almost looks like a mustache, where it contacts the snow at like 2 points when it's unweighted. And then when you weight it, that flattens out. Whereas a rockered profile would just be a contact point essentially under the foot, where it's almost a banana shape instead of a mustache shape.
Yeah, so camber gets you way more, like more stability, more power, more pop. But rocker is like easy, forgiving, powder flotation, a little less edge holds because that lunge tray effect. We get a little less lunge tray because when we stand on the smile, it like flattens it out. But skinning, very lunge tray-esque experience because it's just under your foot. The tip and tail are cut probably off the snow. But there was one day I was testing boards and I tested split boards and we were just doing a side hill, icy side hill. And oh my gosh, every second the bottom foot, the downhill foot just kept sliding down. I was like, what is happening to me? Why is this so hard? I probably burned 1,000 calories trying to traverse a 200-foot steep slope. And I like to think of myself as pretty good at side hilling. But and then I was like, oh yeah, this is a hybrid profile split board. And this is so much harder than it needs to be right now.
Totally. And for a split board, does it have more of an effect on the inside or the outside edge when you're skinning?
Our straight edge, like the one that's in the middle of the board when you're going down, That is our best friend. That straight edge is like a really long, effective edge. So you get maximum contact. And I have generally noticeably more weight on the straight edge than I do on the short side good edge.
Yeah, which is going to be a pretty significant difference from a skier in how they're traveling.
Totally. So you guys are probably a little more neutral.
Yep. Yeah, and actually for skis, if we're on like a steeper side hill or like an offset like powder slope, sometimes we'll even like raise the heel riser on the bottom ski and keep it flat on the uphill ski to even things out. Is that a technique that you'll use split
For
boarding as
sure.
well? Yeah,
For sure. Yeah. And it's
cool.
a lot of just like energy economy.
Yep. Right on. And then since we're talking side hilling and steepness, I'm going to go into hard boots versus soft boots, unless there's anything else you think we should hit on the boards before we do that transition.
Oh, no, feels good. Largely, if you're just starting out, get that kind of quiver killer because it does everything you want it to be. And as you get more interested in the sport and more involved in the sport, expand from there. Looking for camber, whatever side cut you kind of enjoy riding, early rise. And those, it's good brands, lots of good brands out there. Crew and Jones are great options.
Awesome. And then, so transitioning into like traditional snowboard boots versus hard snowboard boots, let's start with the traditional and like what that setup looks like and what are the like costs or benefits and costs of doing that standard setup.
Yeah. So standard setup is most people are probably just going to ride their resort boot that they ride every day when they go to the mountain and use that for their splitboarding boot. There's also specific, so we're talking about like a soft snowboarding boot that has a soft liner and a soft outer shell. And most people are going to wear their regular ones, but there are specific splitboard boots out there, like the Deluxe XV is a great splitboard specific boot. And when you get into these splitboard specific boots, they're probably going to have some kind of a shank, so the sole is stiffer. The welt, there's going to be like a welt on the back for semi-automatic crampons. Some will feature a little bit of a walk mode where it has either like a strap or a boa or something on the cup of the boot that controls the back part that sits on your calf to give you a little more range. And then your leg can kind of pivot in that space. And those are actually pretty nice and effective. Most
Are
will
those
also have
ones
like,
are those ones able to be used in the same way or a similar way to a pure resort boot if you want to have one boot to go into the resort with?
yeah, I know a lot of people that ride these boots all the time. It's like it's just their one boot.
Yep.
But it is generally a stiffer ride. So if you want that like pretty stiff ride in the resort, totally. But I would say most people probably ride a very similar, the same boot. They just have the splitboard specific boot.
Okay. Especially starting out for the
Totally.
yeah.
So kind
And
of the
then
pros.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, kind of the pros of going with that kind of a setup are going to be the ride feel is very traditional to what you can expect from your resort setup. One, because the boots generally cross over, so you're not going to have this like little ride shock about switching boots. And it's very traditional to how we move. So you get a lot of flexibility tip to tail like this. You get more flexibility, sometimes toe to heel like that, but also this like kind of cross lateral direction. So it's more of that 3-dimensional play, and you can really use your knee like that joystick that can be really helpful for snowboarders turning and stuff. And functionally, that gives you more fine-tuned torsional flex and more fine-tuned edge control of your snowboard, which I think is super helpful, traditional, and a lot of people just love that feel. Cons generally are going to be weight. Like those boots are way heavier. The bindings that you have to use are heavier. Another con will be side hill performance because you do get more flex in these kind of lateral directions. So when I soft boot, my calves, when I'm side hilling, are working way harder. I'm like, oh wow, okay, yeah, the calves. You've been hard booting a lot. The calves are on fire. And then you can use you have to use semi-automatic crampons if you have a splitboard specific boot, which is awesome. But if you don't, then you have to use strap crampons, and sometimes the profile's really wide, so that could be tough to find the right fit. Like Gervell has these wide crampons. I think it's like the G10 wide. Those are good. for soft boot splitboard crampons.
Yeah, because you could actually almost edge yourself out of the crampon if you're sidestepping
Totally.
or French footing.
And the stride quality, like the overall stride quality in the regular boots is, you just don't get, especially if you don't have that walk mode we just talked about, your stride quality is limited in comparison. Still
Mhm.
functional, and plenty of people still walk really, really far and put out these incredible feats and incredible missions. But I definitely use more energy in soft boots.
Totally.
So
Yeah,
that's kind of for
that's
the
the same
person that
thing.
provides. That's kind of for the person who prioritizes the ride feel and doesn't see themselves going on like lots of ski mountaineering voyages, or um, just wants to enjoy splitboarding in their home range.
Yeah, awesome. And that's the same thing as the walk mode range of motion for ski boots, which is a little bit more definitive, I think, as far as like how much range of motion you get. But it's like essentially the bigger the range of motion, the more efficient each stride is. So you burn less energy.
For sure. You guys measure it in degrees.
We do.
They're like 80 degrees of motion. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The soft boot is like 4.
Yeah. Until you get like to 20, which is like I have a old boot that was like an original touring boot where it's at 19 degrees range of motion. That used to be amazing for ski boots.
Yeah, that was
for the walk mode. And then
legendary.
now they're in the 70s, and like the beef boots are like 60s.
That's so good. It really is exceptional
So
technology.
pairing with a soft boot, we're going to have a fairly traditional looking binding when it's on the board in snowboard mode. What are you looking for those split board bindings that you're in? Like, what does the system look like with like the pucks and whatnot?
Yeah, so for the splitboard binding, there's a variety of different brands out there that'll kind of dictate the price, look, and mechanics that go around it. But largely, it's going to be living in that Spark, Karakorum, or Valet kind of brand. And they'll all have, well, Spark and Valet are going to use a puck system, so it'll look just like a regular binding, but more exposed plastic and more bare metal and stuff, weight savings. And then you're going to have pucks on your board, and you'll slide in from the heel side edge to the toe side edge. So that way the pucks are sitting on those tracks, and that's kind of what locks it in. And then you strap in like regular binding. Most will have a high back that has some type of negative lean. So that way, rather than the high back being on your boot, it can be off of your boot to help give us some more of those range of motion degrees and help with our overall efficiency. So that's kind of what it looks like. Generally, I think the Spark bindings are fantastic in terms of reliability, cost, and the overall function. Like they've got this cool snap ramp where you can just push it on, click down the ramp, and you're done. So they resist icing really well. They're really reasonable priced when you look at them compared to others on the market, and they have a pretty good feel for sure. They're definitely a little stiffer and like a little bit less fluid of a flex than a lot of resort bindings, but that's kind of the answer. I think those are some incredible bindings. That's about all I ride, just for
Yeah.
that
And
that cost
even
and
from,
efficiency benefit.
yeah, totally. And even from a setup standpoint, like for me helping new split boarders like get their bindings on and set them up, like it's super easy to swap them between different boards or to change the stance and angles for the
Totally.
pucks.
And just dealing with them, like you
Yeah.
rarely have to, if you maintain them and tighten the screws here and there, you rarely have to touch them again, and they're really reliable in the field.
Yep. And then, so what changes when you go from a soft boot to a hard boot setup, and why would you go to a hard boot?
So the main changes are going to be, like, the boot is going to be different because then you're going to be in like a really soft ski boot. The touring pieces, like the bindings, will be different because you'll have almost like a ski tech toe on your board, and then a heel riser that's fixed onto your board rather than built into a binding like Sparks or some other brand. So with that, you're having significant weight savings on the board. A hard boot setup for me is probably like, I think my light one is maybe around 8 pounds or something like that with the bindings somewhere in there. And then my soft boot board is like 11, something like that. So like pretty significant weight saving, especially when you're talking about saving that on your foot. That's like huge. Um, so really significantly lighter setup. You carry your downhill bindings in your backpack. So that's a little bit different. And the cost of all those things, there's just more components. So it gets to be a little more expensive, definitely. But what you're gaining is going to be, since you're now in like a really lightweight ski touring boot that I think like most, really, really light touring focused ski boot, like an Atomic Backland or something like that. You get top tier of those degrees, range of motion, probably mid 70s, somewhere in there. Really lightweight, modified a little bit to give it a bit better of a snowboard feel. And with that, you're gaining incredible efficiency. Like for me, I think I probably use 35% less energy on a hard boot tour than I do on a soft boot tour. Maybe even more. And that's just me being like, wow, I moved faster and I feel way less tired. And I think that that's a huge perk. Being able to use automatic crampons is fantastic. The side hilling efficiency, like I was saying, oh my gosh, soft boot, my calves can get pretty tired. But when I'm conditioned for it, I side hill in the soft boots great. But when I hard boot a lot, my calves definitely notice the difference in the strain. And then other things like the ride feel is a little different. It's definitely not the traditional feel that you like would expect from your resort boots and your resort board, but it's totally, the soul is snowboarding still alive. You get lots of play, a little less torsional flex, and that fine-tuned edge control. For me, I think it's harder in hard boots to like smooth out variable snow and ride it really aesthetically. Like if you watch Jeremy Jones or some really incredible riders, they can ride any snow and make it look really, really good and ride it with speed and precision. I struggle to do that to the same degree in my hard boots as in my soft boots. So I think that comes from that lack of torsional edge control. But the general feel for the conditions that we're generally like seeking out, soft snow, corn snow, or even just consistently plainer snow, all that stuff is very, very consistent. And I think you can manage the challenge of that micro edge control and the flexibility of the boot, because you get less tip to tail flex out of the hard boot because it's like a hard plastic shell on the sides. I think you can unlock that again by getting a narrower stance with a little more positive angles. Like I think hard boots should totally be ridden with positive stance angles and a narrower stance, so that way you can get that range of motion back from your hips and your knees and being able to pick your back hip and lift it forward. I think it would be really hard to ride a hard boot in the duck foot stance. I think you would lose so much of that three-dimensional movement that keeps us really active and keeps us snowboarding.
So if somebody does ride in that kind of stance, would you recommend against a hard boot, or would you recommend like working on the other stance?
I would recommend trying the other stance just to see. Like most people regularly ride duck foot. Like it's just kind of what you're taught. It's what people get conditioned into. But I'm a total advocate for a double positive stance, unless you're doing lots of switch riding and like more freestyle kind of oriented maneuvers where you want symmetry on both sides. But we're not doing that much of that in the backcountry, or if we're riding our hard boots, we're not doing much switch riding or 180s or anything like that. But everyone has their own different style. So if that's your style, probably duck foot's going to be better if you like riding a lot of switch. However,
And maybe soft boot instead of hard boot.
Yeah, probably soft boot instead of the hard boot. And then the board would be different too. Like a lot of the boards that we're riding are really directionally tuned. So having a directionally tuned stance can be really complementary with that. Because if you're going positive, you have a lot more opportunity to like open your back hip and your shoulders into your heel side turns, which gets you a lot more edge contact, edge hold to really make bit more faster and nimble turns, as well as just have more kind of control. And it doesn't have to be that crazy. Like probably most free riders you're looking at, like Jeremy Jones, Nick Russell, those guys are all going to be in that slightly positive stance, even in their soft boots, just because of that opportunity to open up your shoulders, pick up your back hip, lead with your chest a little more for that stability kind of concept. So
Awesome.
if you're coming from a duck stance, I encourage you just to try it. Just start taking that back foot a little more forward, and recognize it's going to feel weird at first just because you're changing your stance. Like I can notice if my stance changed by like half an inch and a couple degrees. So it'll feel different, but I think that's how hard boots should be ideally are ridden. So that way you can have that tip to tail motion that's coming from your hips and being able to pick up that back hip and shoulder.
Awesome. And then for hard boots, because last year, to my understanding, there was some loss of availability in the types of hard boots out there. What are the best options right now? And then what are some of the options you're excited about?
So options overall, yeah, like Phantom Snow, they produced what was like the first out of the box splitboard hard boot, which was a huge change from people like buying a ski boot and then reading forums and being like, how do I change this to snowboard better? Should I Dremel down the back? What buckles can I remove, etc. So having to do a lot of community source mods to just go to go on the internet and buy a ready to go boot. It's a tough model though. Like it's a pretty niche market. So I think financially it wasn't really sustainable for them to keep doing it. However, they do still produce like a lot of the key components that they used to make those mods. So they still make the link lever, which is something that gives you a little more dampness and also a very consistent forward flex in the boot. And that's a big difference between a ski boot and a snowboard boot. Is a snowboard boot is going to have like a very uniform flex, rather than a ski boot with like kind of the buckles and the pivot point. It sometimes flexes different, like different stiffnesses at different parts in the boot, and you can feel kind of like the breaks where there's a buckle and that kind of stuff. So the link lever did a really good job at providing a little bit more uniform of a flex and a little bit more range. Because also that's the thing with the ski boots is you stop pretty quickly because of that forward lean lever in the back, or the tour mode lever in the
and
back.
The link lever is like the key mod, to my understanding.
There's some people that are fine without the link lever. I rode like half a season without the link lever and a couple seasons with the link lever, and I think the link lever is the mod, yeah, because it gives you that more range, more fluid, and more consistent flex. So now most people and some shops like Alpenglow Sports, they're buying backlands like a Backland Pro and then connecting a link lever onto the back because that's the boot that the link lever is made for. And it's a really light boot with great range of motion. So like Alpenglow Sports, you can buy a Backland Pro and they'll do the mods for you, whether that's the link lever and adding an ankle strap or just one of each. But that's pretty cool that shops are still kind of supporting that. And they actually did a lot of research too to see what was going to be the next best hard boot after Phantom left, and that's where they settled on. That's the one they want to provide to their customers.
So they're not doing they're not doing the new Scarpa TX Pro anymore, Tele boot.
At least not yet, but that one I'm honestly pretty curious about, dude. I am pretty curious about. I think the bellow would be really cool in the walk-in. I don't know how I would like it on like firm toe side turning, but to be determined. Research still to be done.
I'll have the stiffer version of it this season in 27 if you want to try it.
Oh, nice, dude. I'd be down. That sounds pretty rad. So there's also one more before I forget, but there's another brand called Key Equipment that's doing ready to go splitboard boots out of the box at a pretty approachable price point too. So that's something to look at. I think it focuses a little bit more on the ride feel than the walking quality. Since you're in a hard boot, you're already getting great walking quality, but a little less range of motion for the degrees, but definitely a thicker liner and a little bit more of a consistent flex as well. It's built off like a Roxa boot platform.
Yeah, it looks like built off Roxa, and then it's been like sort of designed with Krister. Mm-hmm. From what I can see, the like riding partner of Nikolai.
Yeah, he like got, I think the base design was was Sans was without him, but
Mhm.
I think he has his own pro model boot now with
Yeah.
them, which
Yeah,
is
that's
cool.
what I'm seeing looking at it right now.
But that's another great
It's a
option.
sexy speed yellow.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, that's definitely his pro model.
Yeah.
But I've heard
Right
good
on.
things about the ride quality of that boot.
Okay.
And then there's still some DIY flows that are awesome, but based off a backline boot and stuff like
Awesome.
that.
And then one thing that to keep us moving that a lot of boarders won't necessarily be familiar with is the toe piece that you're using for going uphill with a hard boot. And so it's a
Mm-hmm.
pin tech toe piece. And a lot of split boarders will use just like a skiing toe piece. And there are totally companies like Skimo Co. that will sell just toe pieces. Are there particular toe pieces that boards are already set up for and work really well where the holes already exist in the board? And then what toe pieces do you use?
Yeah, so there are a lot of toe pieces have come a long way in the last like 3 or 4 years, 5 years. A lot of places had to. At first, it was like you buy an adapter from Spark and you could put a Dina fit binding on them, which is a great way. It's just a little heavier because you have an adapter. It's also another thing that you're kind of relying on for it to work. And then there were a couple like years of a bit of durability issues across the more splitboard specific ones. But in the last 2 years, we're kind of, I think, through those big picture durability issues. And now there's some really great options on the market. Like, um, I personally generally use these Volet STS tour bindings. Um, they're very, very, very just simple, like very rudimentary. There's not even a spring in there. You bend down, click it into your boot, lock it into place, and it fits the crampon. It's one of the lightest on the market. It's also, these are the same ones that I bought from you one time off your kind of tactical skis. Yeah, lightest. They were like $160 for the toe pieces, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and
And
they're
they get the
easily
job done. They're really
repairable in the field.
reliable.
They're really easy to repair too if there's an issue because there's like essentially one moving part.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I love that after having been let down by two tech toes in the same like 2 month period
Yep.
where one the pin fell out and one the spring blew up. And I was like, and that was during the era of flipboard specific tech toes not being that durable. And I was like, I just want something that's gonna last and is affordable. So that was kind of the metric there. And then Spark actually just came out with a tech toe with ATK that is very competitive on weight with that Volet one. Definitely steeper in terms of price,
Mm-hmm.
but the ATK reliability looks awesome or is kind of renowned, and I bet that they brought that to the splitboard market. And those have specific hole patterns as well. So like that
Yep.
is made to fit a splitboard hole pattern. And Phantom has one that they make with Atomic,
Yeah, and the
and it's a
splitboard
whole
hole
generation,
pattern
new
is
generation.
typically a the 3-screw pattern. Is that
Nailed it.
correct? And
Yeah,
not a 4 like ski boots.
yeah, it's just three in a triangle.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be really curious, minus the like hole compatibility. I'd be curious about the ski trab toe piece as well, because those are fairly easily repairable in the field because
Okay.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
one singular continuous U-shaped spring for the toe piece,
Okay.
which for me I really like for skiing, because it adds a little bit of elasticity to the toe piece as
Mm-hmm.
well. But I don't know how well it'd work for split boarding just because of the different hole pattern too.
Totally. You just need the adapter. But
Yeah.
one of the things too is like we don't need that much from a toe piece. We just need it
Hmm.
to be locked on the uphill.
Totally.
But like don't really have as much of a downhill demand for it. Of course, it like should be able to stand up for split skiing and that kind of stuff. Or for us, we just a lot of them have been kind of overbuilt in the past, and we just need something that's reliable and light
Yep.
and fits your wallet.
Yeah, and I think that the Volet STS is like probably as you were saying, the simplest and the best option in a lot
Totally.
of ways for that.
There's another one that's kind of being pioneered in Europe called the Grizzly Tech Toe, and
Yep.
it is awesome. It is so thin, so light, all burly metals. It hasn't been released yet, but it has the simplicity, like same kind of click lock as the STS. That's something I want to try for sure.
Before we go into sort of wrapping this, are there anything splitboard specific that we haven't talked that you think we should?
I don't think so. I think those are the big picture things.
Yeah.
Boots, bindings,
Okay.
boards.
Cool. So one of the wrap questions I was going to ask is like, what are some of the common errors and or like repair pieces or like prep pieces that you need to like make the board work for you long term? And like for me, the one that comes to mind most is Loctiting the screws on the toe pieces for going uphill.
For sure. Loctiting all the screws. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Loctiting all the screws, and periodically checking that everything's nice and tight. We just have so many more screws than you guys. And each screw is critical to your travel efficiency. So making sure that those are Loctited at the beginning of the season, middle of the season, and periodically cranking them down. Other things in terms of common repairs, just making sure you have a screwdriver. It's pretty incredible how often maybe there's not a screwdriver in the crew for a
And a
splitboard.
bit
Always got to have it.
and a bit that fits.
Yeah, totally mandatory. And then that's probably a scraper. I think scraper for splitboarders is essential, especially in
agreed.
that sprint. Anytime, always bring a scraper. We just get so much more icing than everyone else, and it's so critical to get your board back together in efficient time.
Yeah, and when we're talking
is key for
scrapers,
that.
like an old wax scraper for that's been like I've chopped mine in half, works great. And then also like the MSR pot scraper works quite nicely because
Totally.
it has that brush on it.
Totally. I don't know when the last time we went out without a scraper was. So I use MSR pot scraper a lot. It works fine. It works great. And then Jones has like a really credit card sized one that you can see just like a board chop here and there. And if you ever see one of those, you should buy it.
Yeah, I do like the ones that have a little bit sharper edge. So like one of the wax scrapers I have is a triangular shape, and I like that triangle shape for a split board because it gives you a little bit sharper tip to work with for getting under edges. And at least I've used that with clients a few times and they really like it. But the MSR pot scraper also comes with that bit sharper edge or like tip.
Yeah, the sharp edge is nice. Another thing to keep in mind about going back to the screws thing is it's easy to forget about checking the screws of the buckles of your straps.
Mm-hmm.
There have been plenty of days where either a client's buckle or strap has come off, and even my buckle and my strap has come off once or twice. I'm like, oh, well, now I got to ride with just like a toe strap, and that's
or a volet strap.
Not the point of walking up here, or a volet strap.
Yeah, right on. And then so I think that brings up the point of repair kit. And it's like definitely bring a screwdriver, definitely bring the screws that are used for your setup. Any other pieces that are like absolutely critical for a split board specific repair kit in your mind?
Honestly, beyond the little more screws in the screwdriver, a tip clip can be really helpful because we don't have a tip clip when the tip clip falls off, especially when the front comes off, then it's just so sad. Your ride performance is really compromised. When the back comes off, not as big of a deal.
Oh, for attaching the board back together.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Sorry, thanks for getting more specific on that. But for attaching the board back together, having an extra tip clip can be very nice.
Yeah.
Because it changes your ride without it.
Yep. And speaking of which, for people that might not be familiar like with how you actually ride the board versus where it goes on your feet for when you split it, why do you not split the board and then walk the way the board is normally set up?
Oh yeah, it's kind of crazy concept, huh? It's largely for a couple of reasons. One is your uphill ski gets you a lot more stability, just whether you're walking or skiing. Like even skiers kind of feel this. Like the uphill ski is kind of a lot of times where you're like anchoring your weight into. So it'll be the same concept. We want our longer edge, our more effective edge, that straight edge, to be on the uphill side or on our uphill foot. So that way we get that better purchase. And then also, if you ever have to like split ski, you have the side cut on the inside so you can make easier turns. So those are two of the few reasons of why we end up with our skis reversed.
Yeah, awesome. So like to sort of recap, what I have is for the snowboards, it's like pick the board based on the objective and the type of conditions you're going to go with. Like start with a quiver killer, then go to a pow board, then go to like a lightweight ski mountaineering board. was what is your preferred mode. Then for boots, you want to fit it to the objective as well, where it's like if you want a surfy feel and just to be a little bit lower cost, stick with the soft boot. And if you want touring efficiency, then go to a hard boot and crampon compatibility. And it's really like, in my mind, split boards, it's like keep the things as clean and simple as possible and like reduce moving parts so you increase your reliability.
For sure. That's always a good theme. And yeah, I think like for the soft boot, hard boot conversation, like I think hard boots have a place in everyone's quiver. Like I don't think you have to fully be I'm going to ride hard boots all the time person, which honestly, sometimes I'm like that because the efficiency is just so great. And so but I do think like hard boots have a place in all the quivers, especially if you prioritize having the ride feel more often, then ride your soft boots more often. But then on those bigger days, busting out the hard boots can be a huge strategic advantage. And as a guiding tool, like I pretty much only guide in the hard boots just because or like leading groups through the mountain boots give you a lot more of an advantage, being able to kick steps, being able to side hill more efficiently, make better tracks. And me using less energy is only good for my clients.
Right on. And because I haven't had you on the podcast before, I'm going to ask you one of the closing questions, which is, what's your favorite route or objective? And it can be like one you've done one time or one you've done a ton and returned to.
Favorite route or objective? Since we're in the ski world, I'm gonna keep it pretty still in the ski splitboard world. But broadly, I love any Eastern Sierra multi-day traverse. I think that's got to be one of my favorite experiences that you could have. In particular, one that stands out to me that I did a couple of years ago was going from Convict Lake to Mammoth. I thought that was fantastic because you get to cruise by Red Slate Peak and ski it if you want to, and then drop off the backside along the Silver Divide, and being a whole layer back in the Sierras. Always a great opportunity to see unridden or maybe unridden stuff or stuff that you're just like, look at it and say, wow, I can't wait to ride that. And being able to kind of tick off lines as you move across one of the most beautiful ranges in the world, and then end in Mammoth where you can go get Mexican food and do all this stuff. It's beautiful.
Awesome. Right on, Isaac. Thanks for hopping on to talk splitboarding things, because that's a topic I am not super familiar with.
Yeah, dude. Happy to. Thanks for having me.